Hi.
Hi, we did it.
Well, how's it going? It's been a minute.
I know. I'm so glad we got to finally see each other. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
My first curiosity and question is um when you first got there, were you how did you feel about the environment, the school, the
Mhm.
classroom? Was it what you expected or was it and I know you have some familiarity with the Middle East because you yourself are, Syrian. And so,
Yeah.
have you ever been to Lebanon before this trip?
So I haven't. And the last time I was in the Middle East, I was, incredibly young. And so going into this, I had a very blind confidence because a lot of my family and relatives are saying, Amir, be careful. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. I go, you're just, a lot of people, especially immigrants, they kind of look back and they see how great the US is. And they go, oh, that place back there, terrible. And so, really, when I landed, it all hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living on my own for the first time in a foreign country. And it's, Lebanon, right? There's like a war going on right there. So, I was very stressed getting off the plane and I was driving through Beirut, and the driver I had, he was pointing out various buildings that aren't there anymore. So then I was like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing?" We get all the way up to Tripoli though, and as we're pulling in, I see the school, I see a bunch of kids running around, and it was a Saturday morning, so I was like, "Oh my gosh," right? And I saw how much it was like a little gem hidden away amongst all this you know rundown area. And that really put me at ease. I thought it was really sweet. I started meeting people and that made me realize, okay, no, like this is gonna be great. I'm gonna have a great time.
Oh, I love it. And how was meeting? I mean, this is so important. Mustafa is he is the center of it all. He really
Mhm.
is an angel and the man behind all of it and really does so much behind the scenes. And so how was it meeting him? And I'm sure that his hospitality was above and beyond. He's just
Oh
really good
yeah.
at taking care of anyone and everyone. So,
He really, any concern I possibly had, it melted away just shaking his hand, right? He has this presence about him that it seems like otherworldly. Like it's like those movies where you see the secret agent walk in and everyone drops everything and acknowledges him. Just walking around the town, you could see some of his prior students and they would give him a little salute, you know. He was very endearing to me. He took care of me if I ever needed anything, and he was very open to talk with me and always be there for me. So I really he has a special place in my heart now.
yeah, he has a special place in my heart. I've known him for so long. He's like a brother to me, and I love that. I love that. And how was it, being with the teachers and the students, in the day to day, in the classrooms, whatever exposure you had? I'd love to hear a little bit about, just do you speak Arabic?
Yeah.
Okay, what a gift. So you're able to directly communicate with everyone.
Yeah, my Arabic was very rough, though, I will say. And actually, leading up to this, I reached out to some of my old teachers and I told them, hey, I'm gonna go try to teach English. Um, you know, because this was my first time doing this. And all of them told me, you need to have a discipline plan, you need to establish rapport with them. And it was a very complicated thing. And then I showed up and, the kids were the most well-behaved I've ever seen, right? I never had to raise my voice or anything. It was like I was really shocked by, how orderly everything was. And it was a lot of people don't like it when I say this, but I thought it was easy to, get a class moving along, right?
Mm.
Um, and I think it was just how respectful all the kids were, and probably as a result of how Mustafa like organized the school. It was a blast. I had so much fun talking with them, and we ended up giving assignments and stuff. And it was difficult because there wasn't as many resources as I expected. Most of my lessons were just me on a whiteboard and them having a notebook, but they really made it work, and I thought it was great. So I was really impressed by the students.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I first spent time there, many, many years ago, I
Mm,
was also mesmerized by the dedication and commitment of the kids, especially from having experienced kids here in the US
mm,
where they're like you have to like force them to go to school, force them to do their homework, whereas like the kids here are like it is the best thing they could possibly do is go to the school.
mm.
And they're like genuinely excited. And this is not even
Yeah,
something Mustafa's done. This is like purely their own joy. Like it's their own desire and their own hunger. Um, like I've heard families, if the kids are like acting out at home, they'll be like, you act out, you're not gonna go to school. And that's like it's like a devastation for them because
yeah,
it's such a rare experience, which is like it's so like uh heavy to like to comprehend that getting an education or like having access to school could be such a like a limited resource for people in the
mm,
world, outside of like America and Europe. And so yeah, it was very shocking to me and also endearing just to experience their like their excitement, their participation,
yeah.
their well manners, like the curiosity, the eagerness to like absorb information, to learn, to be taught, to ask questions, to listen. Like it was so cool. So I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say was one of your like biggest highlights? Like if you, I mean, it's hard to probably pick one thing, but is there like a moment with a student or a teacher where it was just like, I'm never ever gonna forget, like a moment of impact is what I would call it.
So one of the first, I believe it was the first week I was there. There was a professor, I believe he was from Colombia. He was visiting and he was a friend of Mustafa's. And so he asked me to help him teach a class on public speaking and debate, speech and debate with some of the older high school students. And so we were in this beautiful little classroom on the top floor. I thought it was the coolest place ever. And I liked it a lot because it had an AC. And um,
Yes, another thing that's like rare is like
yeah.
this is what people like, I have to explain like they don't have these luxuries, these
Mm,
things that we take for granted every single day. Like these are not things that are available easily to
yeah.
a
And
lot of
I'll
people
tell
in the
you
world.
what, it was hitting 120 degrees at
Yep.
its worst while I was there, which was, oh man. But what we did as an exercise to kind of warm up the students to speaking English in front of their peers, because it is a little embarrassing, right? To, fumble through sometimes, is he brought a taxi from New York, a little toy taxi car, and he would tell everyone, hold it. And if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go and who would you bring? You can bring one person, right? And I went first. I said, "Oh, I want to go to Brazil. I think the architecture there is cool and the music is great and I want to bring my brother just because I think he would like it too. He likes soccer, right?" I thought it was going to be I want to go to Italy, I want to go to Rome. Every single student, I think except for one out of about 20, said they want to go back to their hometown in Syria, whether it be Idlib or Aleppo or even Damascus, right? And every single time it was they want to go there and they want to bring their mom because they haven't seen their mom in years, or they want to bring their brother because they passed away. And that really, made it hit like exactly what these people go through. Because from my family experiences and what I have always understood, from the civil war in Syria was a lot of loss. And I hadn't really given much thought to those who were displaced as much. And so really seeing them and, in that question, it was supposed to be a fun little icebreaker, but, really exposed to me a lot of what the reality of these kids' lives were and how much they lost even in, having the mercy of being able to leave. And from that, I kind of started a discussion on what life was like systematically for them in Lebanon. And a lot of these students, they know that they can't find work in Lebanon, or their high school diploma doesn't really count. There's no accreditation of their degree. And so, as much as that kind of broke my heart, it almost also made me realize how much these kids were, you know, treating their education not as a step for them to get to a better means, but really for the sake of pursuing knowledge, right? They weren't getting necessarily anything out of it except for the literal education they were receiving, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I always told myself I want to go to school. so I can graduate high school and then go to university and then go make six figures or whatever, right? That's the path we all take. For them, they don't really have that end goal. So everything they did was purely on their own will and accord, which I thought was really admirable.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, so yeah, there's two things here that come up for me is like in my Syrian work and experience, having snuck into the middle of the war
Mhm.
and having spent so much time with these students as well, people were surprised to hear me say that their first wish would be to go back home, like
Mhm.
that they flee, that they, like they ran and left by force, not by choice.
Mhm.
And uh and if they have an opportunity, how quickly they would go back to what they know, to what they loved, and to hopefully find a loved one or reconnect with a loved one. Though most of them have lost so many loved ones. And in terms of like the accreditation and stuff, like we in the last 2 years, we've just gotten the opportunity where, uh, depending on education, you could take like this like governmental exam,
Mhm.
and we've had like I think it's now 30 or 40 students. I'd have to like really look at the statistics, but have taken this exam after, like,
Yeah.
and now have the opportunity to actually go to college, which
Mhm.
is bewildering. It's like shocking to their system. So I love that you highlighted the fact that they like the first 5, 6 years, it was just to learn, just to expand their consciousness, just to gain information and knowledge. And now there's a possibility that there could be more, and that they could be accounted for, that they can be identified, that they can be someone.
Mhm.
And what a dream to imagine. Like, even asking them that question, they kind of, I don't know if you experience that, but they kind of just stare at you and they're just like, they can't even
Mhm.
fathom the option. So they're
Yeah.
kind of like deer in headlights, with headlight, like they're just like, what? Like,
Mhm.
and they like kind of have to like really think about it. And yeah, it's so beautiful. Wow, I love that. I loved your shares. I love it so
Yeah.
much.
Something I thought was a little interesting to me was usually because I live here in Orange County, ask someone, what does your dad do? And I always got the most complicated and vague answer. He's a data analyst for this, he's a software engineer for this, yada, yada, yada. And then over there, it was so much simpler, right? I would ask someone, what does your dad do? He sells cucumbers. I couldn't fathom hearing that here in Orange County, right? But it really is a different lifestyle. And I always ask them, would you ever want to live in America or go to university? And believe it or not, I had a pretty 50-50 even split of yes and no, because a lot of them, really value their lifestyle. Here it's very aggressive, go get a job, work, and get money. That's really the crux of it. For them, they didn't really see much value in that. They really wanted to read, and they told me they want to just enjoy time with their family above everything, which was really kind of a main theme I noticed throughout my month stay over there.
Yeah, quality of life, right? It's
Mhm.
it's and also I think the reason why it's the awareness of quality of life, and like the longing for and the desire for, is because, like you said, they are exposed to a civil war
Yeah.
for years on end. So when I can't even imagine what it would be like to be exposed to like that type of turbulence and violence on a day to day to day. So, like thinking of a future, like imagining a future, or like working towards a future when
Mhm.
your current present reality and life is so volatile and
Mhm.
uncertain. It's just uncertain. So to think beyond now, today, or tomorrow is seems almost kind of ludicrous. Like, why would I do that? I don't know if I'm going to be here the day after tomorrow, type of mentality. So
Yeah.
it's pretty heavy, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
did you get to spend any like time like with any of the teachers, any like special moments or like conversations there?
Every day, really, I made an effort. I met one gentleman. He was also another volunteer who came from, I believe, Cambridge in London. And I spent a lot of time with him. I called him John bin London a lot because all the locals knew him because he comes every year, and it was also really jarring to hear a British accent speak Arabic, but he was better than me. So we bonded a lot over being foreigners here, and he was just a joy to be around. Mustafa, he would always have me for dinner
Yes.
every
If
night.
you say no, you have hurt him.
I
Like,
know. I felt terrible because the last night I was feeling a little ill, so I was like, I can't. He was like, What?" I was like,
yeah,
"Dude."
yeah, yeah,
But oh my gosh, the food he would give me was incredible. And coming home, my parents try to cook Middle Eastern food, but now I can't enjoy it because him and his wife were
oh wow.
incredible. So that's one flaw I have with the trip. But yeah, the hospitality everywhere, really, any teacher, there was definitely a barrier sometimes where it was just difficult for me to understand their accent because, like I said, I wasn't the greatest Arabic speaker. I could generally get the gist of what was going on, but you know, I was always able to have a great conversation. I met some teachers in the morning from the UNICEF. They would use a school in the morning, and I met a lot of them, and they would express to me their concerns with how many students there were per teacher, and it really generally the sentiment I got was a lot of appreciation for me being there, even though I was only there for a little bit, just because of how many students they had to manage.
Mhm.
It was really oftentimes 30 or 40 kids in a room, and I thought most of them were very engaged and on top of it, but sometimes I would notice, a couple in the back that were dozing off or, not very present. So that's where I really tried to make myself useful as to not intrude with the teacher's plans, but, kind of spot the kids that were, not quite there with everyone and try to uplift them a little bit.
So oftentimes I found in my travels there and my time there is that those students that were having difficulty being present or feeling as though they didn't want to be there or were less curious, less hungry to learn is either A, they have experienced some severe trauma where they're just disassociated. Uh, B, they have to work. Like
Mhm.
they have to work outside of going to school to help the family to make a certain amount of money. So they're just tired and like, they're only here because like their other peers are here, and that's like kind of how they like kind of assimilate, like kind of how they are feeling still a part of it, even though they kind of stand out.
Mhm.
Uh, trying to think of another reason why. Sometimes sometimes they're like kind of like orphans, so they don't feel like they're kind of not only displaced, but they're like displaced like there's like a layers or like levels of being displaced. There's like the displaced from having fled out of their home country, and then there's like the displacement within, like they might be living with like an aunt or like a distant relative, but like if their father died and the mother had to remarry to survive, to live,
Mhm.
oftentimes what I understood is that she would have to give up her kids with that her previous husband who'd passed so that she can start this new life, a new family with the new husband.
Mhm.
And so it's just like the psychological um difficulties, I would
Yeah.
say, just to simplify, um are really intense and deep,
Mhm.
So that's the first 2, 3 years we did art therapy primarily just to help them work that stuff out,
Mhm.
and I would say that that's something that they will need to do for years to come in light of what they've endured, what they've seen. So uh gosh, I'm so glad that you were able to go. We've had over a dozen volunteers come through for the unseen
Mhm.
to go to the schools, but I've had to like get on the call and just kind of be like, it's a challenging environment, like Tripoli itself is like this poorest city in all of Lebanon. So just
Yeah.
the location, just that, just like, hey, just so you know, the school is in the poorest part of Lebanon. So it's like a huge contrast from Beirut, the city, to Tripoli. And
Absolutely, actually. I made it a very distinct effort to meet as many people as I could, so I could really get a feel for the whole city. And at the beach, I met a couple, I believe they were millionaires. They were very wealthy. They had jet skis and, Land Rovers. And their son, he pointed at the top of the mountain and was like, "You see that giant house? That's mine." I'm like, "Whoa." And so the difference between, the good life there, because the good life there, man, taking the bus to Batroun and walking around, and it felt like I was in Rome, right? And then just the stark contrast between that and then, Bedawi, or where the school was, it was incredible to me that just 2 miles away you had, life of the rich and famous basically, and then, a refugee camp. So that did upset me a little bit sometimes, seeing just how drastic it could be. But there wasn't much you could do. And I do think that's a big reason a lot of the students, while I was there, they were telling me of their families' plans to return to Damascus or return to Syria, which was, it was really interesting. It was in the air, that
yep.
that feeling. And I would see so many cars on the freeway, which is a whole other conversation, the driving there. I'm not gonna get into that. You'd see these cars and with like basically a house on the back with all their furniture and stuff. And it was in a way heartwarming to see like, such a transitional point in a lot of these students' lives and being able to see it myself.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting the contrast because I feel like we can also, it's here as well. It's here in the
Mhm.
States. It's in different parts of the world. Like, me living in LA, there's at least 5 different blocks here just on the west of LA where there's like homeless encampments. Or
Mhm.
obviously I can drive 40 minutes to the Skid Row in downtown LA, which is like the biggest homeless encampment in LA.
Yeah.
But there's homeless youth in Orange County, like,
Mhm.
that are trying to figure it out. So, and yeah, and it's hard, man. This we are beyond blessed and privileged and to have like a roof over our head and a bed to sleep in and like the
Mhm.
resources or the options to access resources. Like we have the option to access resources that most people don't have. So
Mhm.
well, I'm so glad you got to go. I'm sure that I know Mustafa, I know with certainty he told me how wonderful it was and refreshing it was to have like a newer face. Like
Mhm.
often what's been happening is that if someone volunteers and goes, they just keep going. We have like a few regular volunteers that go every year or every other year,
Mhm.
but no new faces show up. And so I knew that in of itself was going to be such a gift. And for them it's not even that you're there, it's that like they're not forgotten,
Mhm.
that we know what's going on. And so I just want to thank you for volunteering
Sure.
and like spending time with them. I know it meant so much. And yeah, and I'm so grateful that you got to have that experience. I know it came with its own challenges for you to adapt
Yeah.
in the living conditions. And you and I had a few calls, but I think it's such a opportunity to like see things from a new angle and perspective. So
Mhm. I have to say that was definitely the best month of my life spending it there. Um, Growing up in the US as a Syrian Muslim, I'm so used to seeing on the news or in the movies, everything indicating that life over there is terrible. My own parents, they would kind of feed that into me, right? And so the
yeah.
big reason I wanted to go, beyond the volunteering was to kind of prove that idea in my head. I was like, no, it can't really be that bad. And it was quite the opposite. It was really the greatest time in my life. Everyone I met, if I was in a taxi, I said, I like your car. He would say, dude, you want to drive? Like, take it. If I told someone I liked their shirt, they would take it off their back and offer it to me. It was it was incredible. And it really reminded me like what a lot of these organizations are fighting for, and actually being there on the ground and like doing it, because I've fundraised before. I've done all the, typical college student activist things, but being there was really eye-opening to me. So I really want to thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Oh, such a pleasure. It's yeah, I'm grateful that my life has worked in a way where that was something that happened in my life. Like,
Mhm.
um, I get emotional. I get emotional every time. It's just like I think about how I was sitting at a coffee shop and one conversation ended up changing the whole course of my life. I
Mhm.
didn't even know where Syria was on the map. Like I say this with like such humility. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. And the fact that I just got up and was like, you know what, I'm gonna go and find out. And and then it turned into this beautiful project that took over the last 12 years of my life. And so um, and it's such a privilege and honor to be able to do this type of
Mhm.
work, and it's like when you say it was the greatest month of your life, but like what other people aren't hearing is all the challenges and the hardships and like
Mhm.
the discomforts, like and how those two things could be held both at once, you know?
Yeah, I
Um,
will say there were a couple. I don't really like talking about my, not struggles, but I'm very optimistic, and any difficulty I had, I thought was not as much as I was expecting, really. But there were some things that, would keep me on edge. I was a little bit of an idiot, and I walked around with this giant camera the entire time taking pictures. And so I was accused of being an American spy a lot, which I
yeah,
thought was incredibly funny. But
yeah,
really, anytime I felt uncomfortable or anything, I just had to look at the students, right? And it really put perspective in, like, before me, like this 8-year-old right here has gone through more than everyone in my neighborhood at home. And so I can't really look at anything and say, man, that was difficult, man, that was hard, because I know there's hundreds of other people that are going through it every day. And, I do say I had a lot of fun, but part of it is because I knew I had a plane ticket home, right? That's the biggest thing, biggest part of it.
yeah,
For a lot of these people, they're kind of stuck. And,
very much so.
and for me, it was a little reprise from America. And I knew I was going to go to college afterwards and do all these things, which is a representative of the privilege I had to go visit. But it did definitely give me a more concrete idea of what it means to be displaced, and then poof, you're here now. Like, it's
Yep.
it's a very high wall you're looking at.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, very well said. I appreciate everything you've shared. Thanks for like jumping on this call and to take this
Yeah.
time. And it's so
All
good to
right.
see you.
Mhm.
And I'm always here if you need anything. So please reach out.